Is it past 5:30? Ready? Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Oh, big group today. Everybody wants to see you. And those of you joining online, I'd like to introduce you to Jeilene Tracey. This is her first time here, and she's really an up-and-coming figure in this whole new field that she's created around herself. So I'm sure you'll be seeing her out in the world and doing very big things in the very near future. But we're in for a special treat today. She's all the way here from California to explain and to reveal her unique modality and the work that she's doing. And her story is also very, very interesting and unique. She just started this work even just 6 months ago, right? So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sort of. I'll go into it.
So, I mean, many of you are transitioning or in more mainstream paths in life, and Jeilene has walked a very similar path as many of us have, and transitioned into doing something that's much more spiritually based. So it's a pleasure for me to have her here with us today. We're going to see many other amazing people like her here, but she's the very first. So thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody, and thanks for coming out today, and thanks for tuning in on the Facebook Live. I really appreciate it. So, as Ethan said, I'm Jeilene Tracey, and I call what I do vibrational genetics. And that is because I use light-coded sound transmissions, which I channel, to upgrade and activate DNA to bring your light body into resonance and into harmony with your physical body, to bring your crystalline DNA hybridized to your physical DNA. So a lot of the process that I do has a tendency to work in the energetic bodies, but then also in the physical. And because we are biological beings and we came here to be physical, and every molecule in your body is vibrating, it's very resonant with sound and with sound frequencies, and DNA changes very rapidly and very easily with sound, especially when it's light-coded sound frequencies. So today I'm going to talk to you about the beings that I work with that bring these forward to humanity at this time and why they're doing that. I want to tell you a bit background and how this all came to happen in me, because as Ethan said, this certainly wasn't my intention to be doing this, but certainly was something that I really enjoy and have really had a lot of fun with. But I had a very different background not that long ago. And then at the end, I want to do a live transmission for you to bring your DNA into harmony with your crystalline DNA and your light body into harmony with your physical, and to also bring in light from some of the beings I work with to direct into any part of your body specifically that needs any kind of special healing today. And so I'm going to take you through a meditation, an activation, and a harmonization, and making tones and sound as I do that, so you can get a first-hand experience of what this feels like in your body. And I would love to hear questions along the way, especially in case I forget to talk about something that I want to talk about. I know one of you will ask me a question that will jog my memory, so I really appreciate questions. And you can ask at any time, especially I'll talk a little bit about my background, and then if you have any questions. And then as I'm talking about some of the scientific concepts, definitely stop and ask me. I'm so used to these concepts, it's like another language, but for me, it's the language that I grew up with. I've been interested in science since I was a little kid, and so sometimes I forget that there are things that are confusing to other people because it seems second nature to me. So please stop and ask a question if you have one. So, as I said, I was living a very, and Ethan's reminding me that if you have a question, please use the microphone. So we will pass the microphone to you. I think there's more than one in this room, and we'll pass it to you. That way everybody on Facebook can hear your awesome question too. Otherwise they can't hear you, and they won't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so rewinding back, I started this path actually several years ago, and I was living what seemed like a perfectly great life. I was working at a job I loved. I worked at a microbiome company, which was really cool. The microbiome is the collection of all the known microbes on the planet. That includes bacteria, viruses, fungi, yeast, really all the little tiny creatures that you can't see with the naked eye. So I was working at this great company, married, got 3 kids, great social life, financially stable, everything's kind of humming along, except that my husband really wasn't very happy, I have to admit. He's actually the catalyst for what got me started on this, because although we had a great friendship, we didn't have a really deep and close emotional connection. And he had been raised by 2 very close, wonderful people who had a wonderful relationship and still do to this day, who had shown him what relationship can look like and how wonderful and beautiful it can be. And I hadn't seen that because I was raised by a single mom who was divorced. My father left at the age of 2. And so I didn't get a chance to see that. And in fact, she was recovering from a tragedy in which she lost her husband and her second-born son in a tragic tornado not too far from here in Ohio. And because of that, she rushed into marriage with my father, and it wasn't really for the right reasons. And so they moved out to California, and they had more kids. Me, there I am. I wouldn't be here without that tornado. So everything for a reason, right? But anyway, if I can claim to be that important, I guess. Right? But anyway, so she was suffering. She was grieving. She was emotionally shut down. So I was raised by a woman who really wasn't available to me in that way. And I was born very empathic and very sensitive energetically. And so being in this kind of environment, which had a lot of charged emotions and grief and some drama that happened when I was very young, just was too much for me. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle my siblings' emotions when they were hurting. It was all just too much for me. So I would tend to retreat outside, and I systematically shut down my ability to feel other people's emotions, because as an empath, and we've talked a little bit about that today, I not only felt everyone's emotions, but they became my own, and I felt like I was dying inside. I just couldn't handle it. So I just shut it down, closed up shop. We're not going to be like that. No, we are going to go outside and we're going to play. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I spent a ton of time out in nature, and I hiked through the hills and connected with what at the time for me felt like spirit, because being in nature represented that to me. And it brought me peace and calm and happiness. And because I was an empath, though, I was able to very also skillfully attune my energy to other people's. so that I was able to get the love and attention from people outside of my family that I needed to a certain extent. I used to think of myself as a chameleon, that I could shift my energy into anyone's energy field, really, to get them to like me, right? To get them to give me attention. It was, looking back, it's a little pathetic, but it was a survival technique that I used and utilized for many years in my life, and that's how I got by, and it's how I was successful. So despite my childhood, I very successfully got myself through school and college, and had to be pretty scrappy, but I made it through, and very quickly got married when I was out of college and working and living in San Francisco, and rushed into it, and because I wasn't emotionally connected, ended up divorced very quickly. And so here I am, fast forward to my second marriage, and my husband's not happy. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm not going to lose this second relationship. And so it just so happened at about that time in my life, I ran into a childhood friend who I found out was a psychic medium. And I'd always wanted to visit someone like that, a psychic, but I never really trusted, because I, no surprise, had trust issues. So I knew that I trusted her. So I went to see her, because also I knew that my reaction to my mother's death, which was pretty much no reaction at all, no grieving, was unusual and wasn't right, and that I needed to learn to open up, and I needed to learn to develop a better connection to my emotions. So I went to see her, and wow, was I blown away. I couldn't believe how, I hadn't seen her since high school, and she knew my kids, my husband, my mother, my grandfather. She described them all to a T. I was completely blown away, especially for the fact that I grew up with her, right? And here I am in school with her. I was at her birthday party when I was 5, and this woman knew all this information that I hadn't told her. I was completely blown away. So I asked her how she did it, and she told me that she had been visited by people who had passed her whole life, but also that being psychic and open was a skill that you could develop. That through meditation and doing other energy work, you could actually develop it like a muscle. And so, being science-minded and a very linear thinker, I was like, well, okay then, I'm going to go do that. So off to the library I went, got my stack of 10 books on psychic development, and went home and started reading. And that's when it all just opened for me. I mean, I couldn't stop reading. I was a voracious reader. I started meditating again. I had done it in college, but I started again, and I just couldn't get enough. Once that bottle was uncorked, I just started on this journey. And what happened slowly over time is that I started taking classes and studying and listening to channel. I made a group with some friends of mine, which I highly recommend, that if you're new to this path or anywhere you are on this path, that you find some like-minded people. We started to meet every Wednesday night, and we met probably for over 2 years, and we would practice channeling, practice Reiki on each other, whatever one of us was studying, whatever book we'd read, we'd share that knowledge, and we would compare notes, and we would try it on each other. And it represented a safe space where we could do this, and it was so helpful. We all developed, and we all developed in our own way and discovered what we were good at. But you can't beat being with a group of people that you feel safe with to try this stuff out with. So I highly recommend that. But it was through the meditation that I started getting a lot of information and started doing some channeled writing and started really connecting. And as I did so, I also started connecting to my heart space, and I started to really soften. I started to reconnect in with my ancestors who'd passed, including my mother, and my relationship with my husband definitely started to get better. And it definitely started to soften. I believe that when we're in relationship and we start on this path, it doesn't always mean that we need to leave that relationship because that person isn't going to understand us. I believe that we show up with whatever we're ready to experience and ready to stand up for ourselves for. So for me, at first, I was very shy about this work. I hid it from my husband But I realized very quickly that if I continued to do that, that my relationship didn't have a chance, that I had to be honest with him and honest with my kids. And so I slowly let the cat out of the bag. And at first, there was a little fear on his part that I was, going to run off and join a cult and start something different. Because remember, we're both in the corporate world, science and all this. He's in the same field I am. And so, it's a pretty big shift for us. Eventually, I got to the point where I felt comfortable enough and secure enough in our relationship that I was able to leave my job and spend more time with my kids so that I could connect more emotionally deeply with them. Because it's incredible to say or to admit even with my kids, I didn't have as deep of a connection as I could have. Things were, more superficial. And so this work really helped me to open up and connect into my heart space. And the more I did, the more information started to come. And there really is a lot. I can go into the whole biochemistry of it, but when you do connect into your heart space, you release hormones and neurotransmitters that actually change your brain and open you up and activates your pineal gland, which we'll be doing, by the way, in the activation. So all of that was having an impact on me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. For the first time, I opened up and started to connect into source energy and started to recognize there was something there bigger than me, because before that I had been a pretty staunch atheist that really thought you died and rotted in a hole in the ground. So the world just blew up for me. When I was studying, one of the healing modalities that was really focused on the physical body is when I began connecting with the beings who are going to bring in the transmission today. What would happen is that I would be in the physical body going through the protocol that I had learned in my classes, and every time I would start a session, I would go down into the earth, because I always connect into the earth to ground myself and to start and get my energy centered. I started to see a chamber down there before I would start. And then slowly I started to see a table and beings sitting around this table. And they were very large, and they had sort of triangular heads. And at first I thought maybe I'm imagining this, but then one of them in particular came forward and started working with me and informing me what was going on in the body of my clients. And not only what was going on physically, all the way down to the DNA level, but also what was the emotional imprint that caused that or helped manifest that state of unwellness in that person. What was the signature imprint that they're carrying that recreated this pattern in their body over and over again? And she would give me this information, and I would ask the client, when you were 8, were you riding your bike with your dad and you fell off? And because I was just incredulous that I was actually getting this information, right? And client after client would confirm and affirm what I was hearing and seeing. And when I say hearing, it's information is given to me telepathically. It's not given to me, I don't hear it through my ears. I hear it. It's just like a packet of information that is downloaded into my brain. And so it's like knowledge that I have. And that was the other reason that I really had to trust myself and this information coming from them, because it's not like I'm hearing someone's voice in my head. It's like a packet of information is dropped in and I have a knowing. Once I got used to this telepathic communication, I realized I had been getting it my whole life. I realized as a child, my friends used to all say, "Why do you talk like a grown-up?" Because I'm getting information all the time, that's why. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a lot of remembrances as my frequency increased, and as I began working with these beings more and more, I began to remember that as a child, they were with me when I was out in nature. That in fact, one time visiting my family home, again, I had a flashback of being placed there by them in the first place. And at first, like I said, I didn't know what they were, but working with other psychics and friends who also saw them, I came to realize that they were mantis. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard anything about the mantis race of beings, But many of us had, and many of us probably heard about them being associated with the hybridization program that many are interested in and is ongoing with humanity. That is true, but the work that I'm doing with this group lives in the earth, and they reside there, and there's many, many, many of them, I'd say thousands of them, living, inhabiting inside Gaia in her dimensional fields. Not necessarily physically there, but they're in her dimensional fields. And they're here to support her, and they're here to support humanity, because we're part of her ecosystem. We're part of her living, breathing system. When they say Gaia, they mean the whole biosphere, the whole energetic body. And they're part of that. And they play a key role in holding space for her and helping her ascend. And because we are all over her planet, and because our energy impacts her energy, they have a vested interest in helping us progress. And they have a vested interest in the microbiota of this planet as well, because the microbiota are everywhere. They are the workhorse of planet Earth. They degrade everything. They help the plants grow. They help the animals survive. They help us humans to survive. They are everywhere. They're in every tissue of your body. They're in every organ, every liquid. They're in every plant. They're in every soil. So I can't emphasize enough how the microbiota are the right-hand helper of Gaia and of the mantis. They're all in it together, and they're all working towards the same thing. What many don't understand is that the microbes on this planet have a consciousness. Many people talk about how to improve your microbiome or how to eat right for it, and that's all wonderful, and I absolutely also recommend that. But the thing that they're missing is that the microbiome has a consciousness, and that consciousness is interacting with our consciousness and with the consciousness of every living, breathing creature on this planet. And so it's super important that we continue on this path for ourselves and do this work, because our consciousness is interacting with theirs and has an effect on our physical body and our health and our well-being. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And when we do the transmission today, we're also going to be harmonizing the microbiota in your body, because oftentimes what I've found is that when we're on this path of awakening and receiving a lot of energy, or just living our lives and experiencing all the stress and all the upheaval that's happening on the earth right now, not only is the earth changing energetically, but we've got a lot of stressful politics happening in the world. We've got wars, we've got toxins in our environment, we have a number of different stressors. And all of those stressors create changes in our body at the biological level, and those changes also change the microbiota and make it more difficult for them to survive in your body. And if they're not happy, trust me, you will not be happy, because they make up at least 60% of the cells in your body. So your biomass is weighted more heavily to bacteria and other microbes than it is human. And that's because we co-evolved with these creatures, and you can't survive without them. So it makes a lot of sense to eat and direct your energy towards keeping that relationship healthy. For example, I have a client whom I've worked with for a while, and she came to see me because she had chronic yeast infections. She had, distension in her stomach. She had an infection at the bacterial level in her body. She had brain fog. She had a lot of the symptoms that a lot of people talk about with chronic yeast in their body. It comes out in the body in all different areas and causes all kinds of different issues. Immune suppression, it changes your pH levels. So when she came to see me, we scanned her body. And when I say we, I mean me and the mantis that I work with. And they showed me that she had an overpopulation of several different kind of microbes, and underpopulation of the more beneficial mutualistic microbes in her body, and that she had an overgrowth of the yeast. Part of the reason that she had this going on was because she had been going through a Kundalini experience for about a year. And so even though she's this fantastic psychic undergoing all this great energetic stuff, it was just too much for the microbiota in her body, and it was just getting out of whack. So we brought that into energetic alignment using the tones, and I gave her a lot of recommendations for her diet and for the pH in her body to come down into a good level. A lot of people talk about high pH diets and drinking high pH water and think that that's a good idea. But I can tell you from the microbiome perspective that they really want your pH to be neutral, and that you can vary a little bit outside of that. But if you vary too much in either direction, they're not going to be happy, and they're going to start changing in population, and they're going to start shifting and making it more difficult for you to be healthy. So we really want to keep our pH neutral. Neutral means 7.0, 7.5, nothing lower than 6.8. You don't want to go too high, because I just really want to mention that because there's a fad right now to have high pH water and high pH diets. So working with these different aspects, and also working energetically with her to harmonize the light in her body, because sometimes we carry almost too much light, and when we carry too much light, it can cause disharmony in our physical structure. Sometimes the physical doesn't move at the same rate as the light body. In fact, often it doesn't. The light body moves faster. And what this looks like on the biological level is that you can feel symptoms of stress, like fatigue or inflammation, headaches, brain fog, feeling like your brain's sort of offline. And so this is when another group that I work with, the Arcturians, tend to come in and harmonize the light body to the physical body. And certainly in this client's case, that's what we did to help her, because of this Kundalini experience she was having, changing her tissues and the inflammation in her body. So that's done through bringing light in through the crown chakra, and also using tones, and basically literally hybridizing your light body to your physical, and harmonizing all of the meridians in your body. The meridian system, look to me all like mini chakras in the body, and they are responsible for your chi flow or your energy flow in your body. And when your chi is low because you're sick or stressed, dehydrated, overworked, whatever it may be, it's very difficult for your light body and your physical body to harmonize with each other. So the Arcturians are wonderful at bringing in to harmony the light and the physical body, so that your chi can flow smoothly through your body again and become activated and amplified. And it's very helpful to get us out of that brain fog and get us out of those feelings of fatigue and inflammation. So that was hugely helpful to her, and lowered the inflammation and lowered the yeast. Many people malign yeast, candida. They think that it's this nefarious thing that needs to be treated and knocked down. Really, when you have chronic yeast, it means that your microbiome's out of whack. It means that you need to fortify your microbiome and fix your pH, because the microbiome in your body is responsible for keeping your pH. So, and it's also responsible for hormones and neurotoxins that are secreted from our enteric brain, which is our intestines, which keeps us clear thinking and alert. And serotonin and dopamine and GABA are all produced and mediated by them. And so it helps the brain function much better, and us to feel more connected and peaceful when the microbiome is functioning well. So with all of these things, she really made a lot of progress. The final thing that came in, and I'm using her as an example because all three of the groups that I work with came in for her, and that is a group I work with called the Divinians. And they are a new group that I've been connecting with in the last 6 months. that have been showing me how to rewire the neural networks in our brain, because a lot of the signals in our brain have been taken offline, and our neural networks and the signals that are being sent in our brains because of the society we live in and the world we live in and the way we have come to feel, in many cases, powerless or disempowered, have a tendency, the way they look to me when I look in someone's brain, is that there are a lot of electrical signals emanating out to the edges and spiraling there. And those to me represent self-limiting negative thoughts that we have. And there's a lot of talk about stay positive, meditate, do everything you can to keep your frequency and your energy up. But when you have these repeated patterns supported by neural networks that you have established for most of your life, entrenched in your brain, it's very difficult to do that, actually. And you can sit down and try and meditate over and over again and find, I just can't get centered, I can't do it, all I can think about is that stressful experience. It's because of your neural pathways. And so the Divinians are teaching me to work with all of you to retrain our brains and to lay down new tracks. And most importantly, to bring those new tracks into alignment and into contact with the pineal gland. The pineal is our interface between our light body or our soul energy and our physical body. It's like the portal. It's the fulcrum point. It literally is that place where it all comes together in that pinpoint. And so all of the beings I work with have had me focus on the pineal, whether it's the mantis bringing in their green light to activate the pineal, whether it's the Arcturians bringing in their blue light above to activate the pineal and spread that light, and now the Divinians bringing in the neural networks into contact with the pineal. I can't overemphasize how important it is to activate our pineal. It is where our body releases many beneficial and spiritually awakening hormones that bring us into contact with ourselves in our truth. And our truth is that we are spirit having a physical experience. And it's very hard to remember that on a daily basis. It's one thing to think about it. It's one thing someone tells you that and you're like, oh, right, yeah, that's right. I'm spirit having a physical experience, right? But I still got to go do X, Y, Z today, and I got to make a living, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. It's another thing when your brain imparts a visceral feeling in your body to tell you and remind you constantly that you are spirit having a physical experience. It's not just enough to think about it. You've got to feel it.
There are questions online. Do you want to take them now or wait?
Sure, I could start taking some questions. Yeah.
Okay, question from online. How can I enhance the abilities I currently have? And I also get similar downloads in addition to hearing and seeing things. Last night I saw a being with big eyes, but the head shape kept morphing. Once, while driving, I saw what looked like a swirling portal in the sky, which lasted about a minute and then disappeared. It was not clouds. That's the first question.
Okay, thanks for asking your question. I would say that you should first relax into it and lower your expectations about what you're going to get out of it, because oftentimes when we have expectations about things, it shuts down the flow of information. I know I've certainly been like that. Then the second thing I would say is to, when you meditate or when you think about these beings, have pen and paper handy, and to start asking some questions, because clearly they're trying to communicate with you if they're showing up. And that goes for any of you that are starting to get information or connection to some beings and you're not sure who they are. Start asking some questions and trust that the information that you get, no matter what it is accurate. So sit down with pen and paper and start writing, and whatever comes to you, at first it might be blah, 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 but just keep writing, because eventually it's going to turn into something legible and something you can go back to. And so you'll get information that way, and you'll increase the flow that way.
Okay, next question. Is there such a thing as taking too much probiotic? Do you have a probiotic or prebiotic regimen you recommend?
Yes, I do. It's not so much that you can take, you could take too much probiotic. Sure, you can take too much of anything. But I really recommend generally is that you do energetic work with your microbiome in your body and that you shift your diet to feed them specifically. So I find that here's the thing. You've got something like 30 to 50,000 different species of bacteria in your gut alone. The odds that the probiotic that you're taking is going to have a huge effect on that. Not only that, but it's going to get through the hydrochloric acid in your gut and make its way down into your colon where it's really needed is questionable. Some of it probably will, but will it be enough to really shift the populations in your gut? A better strategy is to incorporate foods that the bacteria really love. And these tend to be resistant starches, things with butyric acid in them, leafy greens, fruits and vegetables. Basically, the ideal diet for the microbiome is mostly vegetables, fruits, some healthy grains as long as you don't overdo it and it's not the wheat that's been sprayed by Roundup. I won't mention company names, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. And so it's not laden with toxins, and a little bit of meat. So if that works for you. If you're vegan, that's fine too. But if you eat meat, just don't overdo it. Eat a little bit of meat, but mostly fruits and vegetables. And there's a lot of talk about how you have to avoid fruit if you have yeast, chronic yeast. And I would say that absolutely I don't agree with that. You need a healthy balance in your diet. You need fruit, sugars are fine, but you need mostly vegetables, and maybe at first you want to lower the fruit sugar, but eventually you need to incorporate fruit because it has a lot of phytochemicals and great nutrients that your brain needs and your body needs to be healthy. So that would be my recommendation. There are prebiotics that you can take that if you're in a severe case of microbiome disharmony or dysbiosis, as we call it, it's good to do, but in general we want to move to the place where we're doing this modulating through energy and diet.
One more. Can you explain being in the heart space and how do I get there?
Absolutely. So the Pleiadians are the ones that taught me how to do this, and people like Michaela who channels them, and I looked at the work by the Heart Math Institute. Of course, being a scientist, I love that because they took a very scientific approach to connecting with your heart. So those are some resources that you can look to. But the Pleiadians teach us that simply by quieting your mind and going into a quiet thought of something that brings you joy and puts you into gratitude and love will put you into your heart space and will elevate your frequency and will make it very easy. Basically, this is always, to me, the precursor of any meditation is that you start by filling your body up with those feelings of love and gratitude. And if you need forgiveness, whatever you're working with at that point, but you feel your body with that beautiful feeling, and as you do, you'll feel the warmth travel from your heart to the other areas. And that's always the first place to start, because anything else you want to accomplish in a meditation will be much easier if you start from that heart space.
Touch back on the diet question that you asked. So there's a huge movement to eat paleo right now. Can you tell me your thoughts on that, and how does that fit into what the microbiome needs? Or
absolutely right. So the microbiomes that I've worked with are not huge fans of that diet, and I actually even tried that diet while I was working at the microbiome company that I was working for. And just as an example, the CEO of the company gave us all for Christmas the ability to get our microbiome tested. So you'd send in a sample, guess what kind, send in a sample to a lab, and they would type it for you and tell you all the microbiome that you had. At the time, I was doing the paleo diet, and I thought, oh, this will be cool. I'm going to have like the best microbiome. Anybody here? Like, yeah, competition. I'm going to have the best one. I'm going to have all the good ones and not the bad ones. Well, it turned out that my results came back, and I had the microbiota. They said, you have a propensity for obesity. You you have these high levels of, I think it was Prevotella and a couple other things that you really don't want in higher levels like that. And I thought, what? Here I have been on this great diet. And for me, digestively, it didn't work either. My digestive system wasn't working very well. And so that's my personal experience. And then with my clients, I find that just too much meat is really hard on the body to process. It works for a small number of people, and some people are wired this way genetically and biologically, where they can handle all that meat and they can handle that type of diet. But I think some of the most benefit people are getting from that diet is the fact that they're taking the grains out. And our grains have so many toxins in them now that in itself is so relieving to their body that they get a lot of amelioration of fatigue and inflammation. I don't think it has to do with the fact that they're eating so much meat, because typically when I have a client that's on one of those diets, or even the FODMAP diet that some people go on who have a lot of inflammation or they've been diagnosed as lupus or other things like that, those diets tend to be so restrictive that the microbiome's literally starving. It's missing enough of the things that it needs to survive well. And so it causes all kinds of secondary issues. The brain doesn't function right. The immune system gets suppressed. They release a lot of precursors to the things our body needs to function well.
I'm going to ask one more question. Okay, one more play off on that question. What about fasting or even intermittent fasting, and how does the microbiome like that?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I just happened to work with somebody the other day that does that intermittent fasting. So once a week, she does a juice fast where she'll just have juices. And the idea is that she's resetting her body's insulin and glucose levels and getting herself to go into that fat burning mode that a lot of people talk about, right? Ketosis, thank you. So here's what her body did with that. Her body said, oh, we're going back into starvation mode. I'm going to slow the metabolism down. So she gets signals in her brain and her hypothalamus to shut down metabolism. It slowed down her thyroid, and it also caused glucagon, which is something that is produced in the liver that helps us determine whether or not to burn fat or to store fat. When it's in higher levels, we burn more fat, and when it's in lower levels, we store more fat. And in her case, her glucagon was taking a hit every time because her body was like, oh, here we go into starvation mode again. Okay, I'm shutting things down. We're going to store this fat because we're going to need it for a rainy day. And so while it might have short-term beneficial effects, I felt like she'd been doing it for a long time. In the long term, her body wasn't responding well. And every time she'd lose the 5 pounds that day, she'd gain it right back. So it didn't have the long-term effect on her weight that she wanted it to. So I think we have to be careful anytime we start doing dramatic things to metabolically, because our body is so sensitive metabolically that it reacts really quickly. And it's better to just, eat lots of small meals, be more of a forager, fruits and vegetables mostly with a little bit of meat, just healthy food choices, low toxins. That's what the microbiota wants. It wants to be fed regularly. It doesn't want this starvation stuff going on. But don't overwhelm it.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm curious about the pituitary gland, and do you ever recommend detoxing it, and how to feed it?
Okay, great question. So the pituitary, if for those of you who don't know, is basically the master controller, or I should say it's the master distributor of the hormones in our body, or the endocrine system. The hypothalamus sends signals to the pituitary, and then the pituitary sends hormones all over our body. It modulates our stress response. It helps our thyroid function well for women, and for men and women too. It's the sex hormones. It's determines when we're going through to menopause and whatnot. So it's a highly sensitive endocrine organ gland in our body that has many, many jobs. And so I find that basically, again, what I was talking about the best way to handle the pituitary and to feed the pituitary is through that really healthy, low toxin diet. Because when we eat foods with toxins and with heavy metals in them, they can get sequestered in our brain, in the pituitary, and they can disrupt function and cause it to function poorly or substandardly. So I'd say the best way to detox the brain, and a couple of things that I like are super healthy fruits and vegetables, things like cilantro is a natural, very good one. Hawaiian spirulina is very good. It's great to work with anything that takes heavy metals out of the body that's not too harsh on your system. Some of the clays that people use to pull metals out of their body, I feel are a little harsh. And so it's better to stick with what just think of what your body naturally would be ingesting, and think of yourself evolving evolutionarily over time. So what did your ancestors eat? And that's the funny thing about the paleo, because I don't know how many of them were hunting every single day and having meat every single day. They were probably eating mostly fruits and vegetables. And so anything you can do to bring your body back into that harmony of how we evolved is ideal for the microbiota that will also help your pituitary.
What about the fluoride or the synthetic fluoride that's in our water, and how does that affect our pituitary gland?
So the fluoride affects the pineal, actually, and it has a large effect on the pineal and causes calcifications in the pineal gland. And so it is really important to decalcify the pineal gland, because that's when, I think Michaela talked about that earlier today, about how she moved into a house with a good water filter that took the fluoride out of the water, and that really helped her to open up and continue her journey. And so when our pineal gland is blocked and the calcification is happening, we've got to clear that out. And so there's things you can do. You can drink apple cider vinegar with water, drink lemon water. Energetically, some of the work we're going to do here today with the activation, I'm going to be opening up and decalcifying your pineal gland.
My question is kind of in reference to exercise. I'm a personal trainer, but I work with, I have cortisol tests that I give my clients. We do a lot of blood work. We do stool things. I'm personally really into the brain and brain waves and changing things. I have clients with MS, Parkinson's, things like that. There's different kinds of training that's like low, easy training. Some that's HIIT training, which is high intensity.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to do the serotonin and the dopamine. Like, I'm a hack. I don't know what I'm doing. But I want my clients to feel better. I've never... Our idea with Candida is get rid of it, check it off, and then once we're done with our bacteria, then we don't address it again.
Right.
I've never thought to consider it as part of the program is exercise and heating the body up good, not too hot, not too low. How is that gonna all come together?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because one of the best studies for improving the diversity of the microbiome, which then of course has all the other effects in keeping us healthy, was a study out of the University of Florida where they had a group of mice exercising and a group of mice being sedentary, and the differences in their microbiota was marked. So the exercising mice had the best diversity and the best microbiota, whereas the sessile ones were starting to develop higher populations of the ones that make it more difficult to live. I'll just say that. So exercise is a huge factor. Exercise, again, it's think about evolutionarily. How did we humans evolve? Because we evolved with these microbiome. So we walked everywhere probably. We got exercise. We walked up hills. It doesn't have to be super high intensity training, but it does have to be constant and consistent. And it's okay to heat your body up. In fact, I think heating your body up is a great thing to do, especially if you're fighting a viral infection. Oftentimes I get information about doing infrared sauna for people who have a viral infection that are having a hard time getting rid of it. That'll help get it out of the system. And that's like our body's natural defense is a fever, right? Which oftentimes we pull down with medicine, but really that's your body's natural way of getting rid of certain viruses that aren't doing it very good. So I'd say the exercise is absolutely wonderful. Regular exercise, healthy, being outside, getting your hands in the dirt, exposing yourself to the sunshine. So when I say exercise, I think all of those things are part of that same package.
And I have some people that I would exercise that they feel that more is better and harder and
yeah, no.
I have a hard time trying to bring them down to the idea that the pain versus gain kind of thing.
Right.
From a microbiology standpoint and a brainwave standpoint, what is the science behind this flowing kind of exercise?
Right. Well, I'd say that anything that puts one into stress, right? So if they think, it sounds like to me like they're exercising not out of joy and love, but out of, oh my God, I really got to exercise. I got to look a certain way. I got to be at a certain heart rate for this amount of time because these are the rules that I've decided are part of a healthy lifestyle. And these, so they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves and they're outside of themselves just enjoying the experience. And so anytime, because like I said, our consciousness is interacting with the consciousness of the microbes. Your Akash is interacting with their Akash. It's incredible. But they've shown me their consciousness and their footprint in the human body. And so when we're in those situations where we're driving too hard or we're pushing something too hard, then different areas of the body suffer. And the neurotransmitters also suffer because we're not in that state of peace and well-being and relaxation about it. It's not fun anymore. It's a job.
You're 1 hour in.
Okay, thanks.
I wondered if you could expand upon what's good for exercises and practices for further decalcifying your pineal gland. For instance, I've been taking for a couple of years green pasture skate oil.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be good for decalcifying the pineal gland. So it's a oil from skates. And also the 5 Tibetans. There's the first of the 5 Tibetans is spinning clockwise, getting yourself dizzy. And I wonder if that, and Sufis do that. And I just wonder if that is good for the pineal gland. That rotation and getting yourself dizzy and kind of allowing it to maybe, I just have an idea that maybe it's free-forming or free-flowing because you're going against.
Right. Yeah, actually that does resonate with me, that there's something about that does open you out. I think what it is, it's allowing you to release certain parts of yourself that are holding you in restriction and creating resistance against opening yourself up to experiencing yourself as spirit having a human experience. And so that's why it's working with the pineal. And it's probably activating it through that. So that does feel good. The skate, when you said that, I got a little bit of a no. You've probably been taking it for a while, you said?
A couple years.
Yeah. You know what? Some take things for too long, they don't work anymore. Might have worked for you in a little while, but oftentimes I find that when we do something for too long, it ceases to have its same effect and that it just doesn't work in the body the way it was intended or used to. Not to mention, it feels like it has some toxins, some residues, and some things in it from the ocean that aren't helpful for your system. Mm-hmm. Hi. Okay. Oh yeah, microphone coming.
Hi.
Oh, we're here. We go to him. Okay,
So
we'll come to you
my-
next.
My question is the body's ability to decipher what's toxic for it and what's beneficial. And my understanding from the microbiome test, if it is something that's possible for us to just take and observe what is needed for the cells in our body to be at its best functionality, and if certain like fruits and vegetables actually are harming it, like, because when I eat a banana, I feel very bloated. I feel like it causes constipation rather than be beneficial. And if there's some type of tests that may be...
Sure. So, I mean, that's a good example. You eat one thing and it kind of sets you off and makes you feel kind of funky. When that thing is a fruit or vegetable, generally I tend to think that the reason your body can't process a natural food is because you are lacking in certain other microbiota, and so you need to take measures to fortify the groups in your colon and in your digestive tract to make it easier for you to digest. And also, you probably need to make sure that you have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach to digest the food, so by the time it gets to your small intestine, it doesn't need to work so hard to process it. So digestive enzymes can be super helpful and get the process rolling, because as we age, we start to lose digestive enzymes in our stomach and hydrochloric acid in our stomach, and it makes it harder for the microbes in our intestine to process all the stuff that's coming down, because it's not processed enough yet, so it's too chunky, and so it can cause what they called small intestinal dysbiosis, and that causes gas and bloating and other things. And then when all of that's happening, then there's sort of a cascade effect that happens in the body. So I would say if something like a banana is giving you an issue, it probably means you have a sensitivity to it for a reason. It means you're missing something. And so...
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Find what is missing? Like, is there, like, the microbiome test, is that something that will actually give results on certain enzymes, digestive enzymes that are missing?
No.
And that we could actually, like, obtain, like, have a certain herb at the same time that we're eating this meat, because it's going to help the body form whatever it needs in order to break down properly and distribute into the organ system that's going to be beneficial for it.
Yeah, it's so personal for each person, right? And actually also a snapshot in time. And so that's some of the work I do in my sessions, is that I do a complete scan of the body and figure out what it is exactly that you're missing. But I would say in general, for most of the people that I'm working with, the things that are missing are in the diet, resistant starches, certain fruits and vegetables, and also digestive enzymes in the stomach. So I'd say that would be a general place you could start.
So I got here a few minutes late, so just to be sure, I have to ask these questions.
No problem.
Do you take any psychedelics before your spiritual trips?
No, I don't need psychedelics. It's all psychedelic enough without it.
So as you claim to be a scientist, the number one rule of being a good scientist is to be skeptical.
Yes.
How do you distinguish between your spiritual, experiences and cold, pure hallucination?
That's a great question. And certainly something I grappled with for a long time, because coming from the scientific world, I looked for a lot of proof. So I was constantly looking for proof. So I would get information and then I would look for the verification. I would tell somebody that you've got too much E. coli in your system, and then I'd say, did you go to the doctor? Did they tell you that? And she'd tell me, yes, I did. I had too much E. coli. Okay. So once I got enough verification and enough affirmation from my clients, and it's just experience. It's empirical. You have to do it empirically. That's what scientists do. They gather empirical information, and that's what I've done as well, because I don't know if you saw this part, but I mentioned that when these beings first started coming to me, I didn't quite believe that I wasn't just making it up. And so it was through all that empirical information that I began to really trust.
So You convince someone who is skeptical like me that these are real and not made up?
Oh, well, honestly, there's no point in trying to convince you. It's a waste of time. I'm not saying that you're a waste of time. I'm just saying that what I'm saying is that if it resonates with you, fantastic. If it doesn't, then that's okay too.
Richard Feynman, the great physicist, says the easiest person to fool is yourself.
Sure.
Right? So how would anyone here would know that they're not fooling themselves?
Right.
There should be some.
If they feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can treat yourself away and I don't know, somehow your mental states go to a place where you feel better. But that doesn't mean.
Let's just say we go to her and it is placebo. Who cares? You feel better. If she has the ability, if I'm trying to feel better and I don't, and she does, and it's just placebo, who cares?
Well, I'm a scientist and I care.
Placebo, do you know how many studies with placebo people feel better?
Yes, people feel better with placebos. Yes,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that the higher dimensions are real. I'm just saying.
Doesn't mean they're not.
Do you have a question for the next?
It's not related yet. Just going back, sorry, we're going to make this boring. Going back to the fluoride, I was coming to this event enough to hear Michaela talk about the fluoride. So I looked into some of the filters. So this is just my comment. Zero
Great.
Water is one of the better filters out there. It actually takes out the fluoride. Brita and a couple others I did some research on doesn't. So just informational-wise, Zero Water is a good choice. That's all.
Thanks.
I took a class with a holistic health practitioner, and when you mentioned the skate oil, it made me think about this. And he suggested that no one eat any seafood ever again because there is no safe seafood because of metals. And I was
so
wondering
much pollution in
what
the
you thought
oceans
about
now.
that. You just mentioned something about the skate oil. Thought I'd ask.
Right. So at least the Atlantic side is better than the Pacific side because of Fukushima and what happened there. There's so much stuff in the water. It's very difficult, like you said, to avoid it. So yeah, I don't recommend. I mean, you could have a little bit of fish. Sometimes I love sushi, but I tend to just eat the stuff that doesn't sequester a lot of the mercury now, because there's just in the oceans. And I know someday that the microbes will clean that up for us, and that they already are working overtime doing that. And there are microbes that scientists are using to clean up the oceans, but it's not going to happen overnight. And we're going to have to do a lot of cleanup as the humans on this planet as well.
I've had the privilege of working with her as Jeilene as one of the subjects as she was first. I was supposed to turn that up.
Thanks for
As
that.
one of the first subjects to help her grow her gift, I told her I was going to go to my heart doctor. And I wanted her to check my heart to make sure that it was beating good. So she adjusted some areas around my heart. I went to the doctor 2 weeks later, and my doctor listened to my heart not only once, but 8 times. And I looked at her, I says, "Is everything all right?" And she glared at me. She says, "Your heart is perfect." Now, you have to understand, I had just had a heart ablation. So she didn't expect that good results. So that's one of the reasons I'm seeing you Monday, is I'm going to the doctor in a few weeks, and it'll be another proof
Right.
of what she does. So,
also taking any Western medicine?
no, I was not. No, I was not. So,
How do you know your body itself didn't heal?
Does it matter?
It does.
I know my doctor seen me before, and my heart was different. I had the ablation. I just saw my heart doctor before, and then I got in touch with her, and then I went back to my heart doctor, and that she was upset because she didn't know what I did to make my heart perfect. She couldn't understand it. Just turn that off. Turn it off. Yeah.
I'm glad you proved it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. But I had to answer that because, I had the proof. I've had the doctor knowing what my heart looked like before she did it, and then after she did it, the heart. So to me, that's medical proof, and that's proof of what she does, and I think she's awesome.
Thanks, Barbara.
In real science, when a drug or medicine is going through clinical phase, there's always double-blinded studies where people don't know they are taking the drugs to see if it actually has an effect. But here, I don't see how one case can prove anything.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, no, hold on.
No,
Guys.
that's
Stop,
okay.
stop.
It's all right.
All right, we got to stay on track.
Yes, let's stay on track.
So let's keep, I understand your question, and it's a valid question, I respect it, but let's not distract us, otherwise we'll be here for 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you had a question?
Could you comment on CBD oil, and have you ever heard of shungite water, elite shungite water?
I have. I heard of shungite water. In fact, I have some shungite that I put into water. Everything depends on the source, right? I think Barb would actually be a better person to tell you whether this particular shungite you had was resonating at a level that would have a good effect on the body. I think water in itself can have an amazing effect on the body when it's in the right form, and water, it's been discovered, has a fourth form. They call that easy water. And that's when the molecular structure is all in a beautiful pattern. And if you're familiar with some of the work by Dr. Emoto, that water can carry a lot of energy, and when it's in that easy water state, it has a tendency to do that. And you can charge that water yourself, even without the shungite. The shungite might be helpful, but when I hold it in my hand, so before I really thought about it, I bought it and I put it in the water and I was drinking it. I didn't feel like my body really resonated at a higher level. Yours might be different from the one I purchased, but that's been my experience with it. Again, someone like Barb can tell you exactly. But I think with all rocks and stones, it depends on where they came from in the earth and the energy that they're holding and where they've been since then, because they absorb so much and they hold so much. So that's the one. And the other question you had was about CBD, right? So CBD sits down on receptors in our body that are all over the body. They're in our organs, in our tissues, in our brain. And so that's why it has that great effect. There is a naturally occurring hormone in our body, or neurotransmitter in our body, that has the same effect as CBD, and that's called anandamide, and it was recently discovered a couple of years ago. And they call, ananda means bliss, and so they call it the Bliss Hormone. And they discovered it because so many people were having such great results with CBD. So doing things to improve and increase anandamide in your body would have the same effect as using the CBD oil, but it would be completely natural to your body. I don't have anything against CBD. I think it's definitely useful. But there's also a natural substance in the body that's pretty ubiquitous in the body. But when we have a lot of receptors for it, and when the levels of it drop, those receptors can sometimes turn from being more restorative and healing in the body and turn into more disruptive of the nervous system. And so when you do things like meditate, and when you do things like clear your energy and eat right and exercise, you're increasing your anandamide. And so that's a good way to do it. In the back?
So, have you ever heard of the Wim Hof Method?
No, I haven't.
Has anybody here ever heard of the Wim Hof Method? Okay. Excuse me. I had really bad Crohn's disease.
Uh-huh.
And I still, I'm not over it. I went to Japan recently, though, and they have a strict, no amphetamines policy there. Okay, so I take Adderall every day for energy. Excuse me. But I couldn't take my Adderall there. And I was ruining the trip for my brother and my mom, and I was at the first time like considering suicide. And I started doing the Wim Hof Method just because I had heard about it a few years earlier, and I was curious. Apparently, people with inflammation and fatigue, it helps. What it is like controlled breathing. It's like controlled hyperventilation, and then there's like cold immersion, so you take cold showers every day. And then a lot of meditation. And it's had a tremendous benefit for me. I'm not going to say that my symptoms are all gone. But, I mean, instantly on that trip, my depression was lifted, and I had energy to go out, and, it was like such a godsend. And the more and more I've done it, the more and more I start getting visions that look like what's behind you right there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's like an iris and then like a pupil. And then kind of geometrics all around it. And so I used to do a lot of psychedelics, and it's like kind of like it's DMT. It's basically what you'd experience if you're doing DMT with like fractals, kind of spiraling around like a center point. And I guess my question, sorry to take so long to get to it, but have you ever seen that behind you? Like I don't even know what that is. I'm saying what that is right there is pretty much like what I see on a daily basis doing this. And I'm not special. I mean, you can get it through I think like the hypnagogic breathing. I think it's do like a lot of meditation basically. But my question is like, not what is that, because words probably couldn't really describe it. But like, is that common? And it doesn't mean there's some sort of progress being made, or because I do feel a lot of fear sometimes when I see it.
Well, each of us has such a different experience when we connect into our soul energy and into ourselves in that deep place of peace and connection into source energy. Depending on where you resonate and what influences you have in your genetics and in your Akash, has everything to do with what you're going to bring in and what you're going to see. I don't see this, but I see other things, right? I connect with different beings and work with them to do different things in the body. But perhaps you are doing something with sacred geometry. Perhaps that resonates with you for some reason.
I mean, I'm with this guy for the most part. I'm an extreme skeptic, and I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but there's something there.
Right.
I don't know. There's something there. Like if it could happen to me, like the most skeptical person ever, I don't know. I'm just kind of just wondering, really, again, like not what it is, but have you ever heard of anybody say anything about an eyeball? It's like, and it's right here too. I can see it here too, and I mean that's not surprising. I've heard about like the third eye.
Right. Well, the pineal gland is your third eye, right? And your pineal gland has some of the same cells in it that are found in the retina, right? And the pineal gland is responsible for producing and releasing DMT. So through your breathing and through your connection and through your deepened self-awareness, through that breathing and relaxation, and Adderall, I imagine, being a stimulant, correct? It probably makes it hard for you to get into that rarefied space.
Yeah, you can't.
Right, but since you were off the Adderall, forced off the Adderall, it's almost like that trip was meant to be for you. You're forced off the Adderall, and you had to find other methods for connecting and for calming yourself. And so you did that, and when you did that, that information was just waiting to flood in, and there it was. And again, it's okay to be a skeptic, and it's great to be wary of information that comes to you, because it's true. Not all information comes from great sources, right? We're barraged with information all the time and energies, and it's not like it's so hunky-dory and every energy is a kind one. There's a lot of creepy, yucky stuff out there too. But it's important to have discernment and to always keep your discernment, but at the same time, it's important to stay open. So you want to just let things unfold as they're supposed to, and just get connected by connecting into your heart space and keeping yourself in a good vibration, meaning keeping your thoughts, using thought hygiene, taking walks, being out in nature, doing things that bring you into good energy balance and harmonics. And when you do that, then you're going to continue to open yourself up to information like this, and you can see where it takes you. It doesn't have to take you anywhere. It doesn't have to mean anything. It can just be what you resonate with. And if you want, like I said, sit with pen and paper and journal as you do the breathing exercises and just start writing down and see what comes out. It's fine if it's total garbage. Let it be garbage. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Don't have
I do want to say, for
expectations.
anybody with inflammation issues or fatigue issues, I mean, it's taken me from, like 100% problem to 10% problem in the course of 4 months. And a lot of people respond back about that and say, like, that doesn't sound right. And it's just, you got to look him up. Wim Hof, he's like a Swedish or Scandinavian, yeah, something like that. Yeah, who's figured out how to do it.
Okay. Any other questions?
We have 45 minutes left. So
Okay, good, right. So maybe I'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to do the activation.
raise your hand.
I have a question.
Where's the mic? Here.
So you mentioned a comment earlier about how you used to stuff emotions down.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing, and it manifested years later for 12 years of debilitating pain.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I am, learning to become more self-aware in raising my vibration, basically that's like 95% gone. We want to talk to you and the guides possibly about what are some things, because I worry too about like things bother me less now because I'm vibrating at a different level, literally. But then I also am concerned a little bit about whether I'm stuffing those emotions down or whether they're just not resonating with me anymore.
Mm-hmm. You mean when you're in a situation and you're wondering, am I not feeling all of the trauma drama that I should be feeling when this person's telling me this?
Yeah.
Am I shutting myself down, or am I just transcending the experience?
Yeah.
I'd say you're transcending the experience, because it's when you're sensitive and empathic and those things are too much to handle. When you learn how to pivot your energy such that you can feel and experience other people's emotions, but you allow them to pass through you, which is what I had to learn to do, and they don't get stuck and sequestered in your own tissues, causing disharmony and disruption in your own physical body, then you're not being callous. You've just found a better way to still experience emotions but allow them to pass through you. And so that's wonderful. You have a question over here? Hi.
I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
No, hold on. Somebody turned it off on the way there.
Hi, I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I just wondered, I heard you talking about the exercise, and I do exercise. I'm part of Rocksteady Boxing, but what are some of the other things that I can either do or...
So with Parkinson's, the other thing that I would do is a detoxification diet. So pulling heavy metals out of your system, because a lot of times our nervous system gets very laden with heavy metals. And so anything we can do to pull those out, to strengthen our nervous system with things like selenium, with iodine for the thyroid, if your thyroid is low, if you have low activity of metabolism that's causing some of those things to get stuck in your body. If you have, I'd really have to scan your whole body to give you a full rundown of everything. But things you can do to improve your nervous system, of course, are just also meditation and connecting into your heart space and relaxing the body and relaxing the nervous system, and then doing the detoxification of the heavy metals, which often can cause stress on our nervous system. So anything you can do to relieve your nervous system would be highly recommended, just in a general way. And then specifically, I'd have to spend time with you and look in it. But today, the transmission that I'm going to be doing in just a minute here will definitely work on your nervous system. And you can bring the light into any specific area of your body that works for you. Okay, well, why don't we get started with that? So everybody, if you can put 2 feet on the floor, and if you can, sit down and get comfortable. and I mentioned some of the beings that are going to help with us today, and I'll just reiterate that. We're going to work with the mantis, and the mantis use a green light that generally penetrates right through the third eye and back into the pineal and lights up the pineal and then travels throughout the body. So I'm going to be taking you through the process of doing that, and I can already feel my head feeling like it wants to lift off, so I can tell that they're here. And the Arcturians as well will come in next, and they'll be bringing in a white-blue light through your crown chakra and bringing it into all of your brain centers, also activating your pineal before they move all of that energy through your meridian system throughout your body, so really increasing and harmonizing your chi. Sometimes we carry too much light, sometimes we don't have enough, and so both of those situations will be handled. They'll be adjusting it to bring it into harmony, and also hybridizing your crystalline DNA to your physical DNA to bring those two into alignment to activate your DNA at a deeper level. And then lastly, we're going to be working with the Divinians to bring in energetic signals and electrical signals into your brain to start growing and fortifying new neural tracts to bring shall I say, release limiting thought patterns and stuck energy and stuck energetic imprints in your brain, and release all of that and bring it into contact with the pineal to help you viscerally feel yourself as source energy having a human experience, so that it's not so difficult to return to that place and feel that manifest itself in your body. Because when we do that, we start to release more energetic imprints of pain and suffering that we've experienced in this lifetime and past lifetimes. And we find it easier to have good thought hygiene and easier to keep ourselves centered and in our heart space. And when we do that, we reach a state of what's called coherence. The Heart Math Institute talks about creating coherence in your life. And coherence is when your heart rate variability is in a good state. It's when you feel connected. It's when you feel calm. It's when your brain's working well. You're kind of firing on all cylinders. Things are going smoothly for you. You're in your flow. So we want to make that easier for all of us to experience on a regular basis. Okay, so let's start by taking a couple of deep breaths. In through the nose and out through the mouth. I'm just going to get connected in here for a moment. So the first thing I want everyone to do is to imagine roots coming down through your feet and through your seat. And those roots are going to travel down through the floor and all the way down to the earth, where they're going to begin traveling through the soil and the rocks, the water, any roots that they come across, and they're going to travel down further and further still, deep into the center of the earth, where they're going to attach themselves to Gaia's crystalline core consciousness. And she feels your connection, and she anchors your energy and holds space for you and opens up the channels of healing for today's transmission. And we're going to use these roots a little later to release any density out of the tissues in the body. So just know that they are there throughout the meditation and the activation. Know that she is there holding space for you. And actually the Arcturians want to start. So they're going to bring in a beam of beautiful, wide, whitish blue, bright light right in through your crown chakra and coming in through the top of your head and lighting up all the different centers in your brain, especially your pineal gland and the master controllers of the meridian system behind the temples. As these tones continue, the light begins to flow downward from your brain, through your neck, outward to your shoulders and down your arms and out your fingertips, flowing down through your chest and your abdomen, your waist, through your legs, out your feet, down through the roots, through to Gaia, where she feels this and thanks you, and loops it back up to the universal grids to create a harmonious flow of energy through your body from the universe and through the earth, bringing you into energetic alignment with those two bodies, engaging all of your electrical circuitry in your body, amplifying your chi, bringing you into harmonic convergence with this energy of the universe, activating and opening all of your cells so that your DNA can hybridize to this beautiful energy. Bring in a beam of emerald green light directly through your third eye. And this beam penetrates your prefrontal cortex and shines all the way back to your pineal gland, lighting it up. Take a deep breath in. Release. Take another deep breath, and as you do, begin to see that green light growing in size and flowing throughout your brain with the accentuation on the pineal gland deep in the center of your brain, opening up all of the channels and the centers, harmonizing and opening that portal between your physicality and your spirit, your physicality and your light body, your human experience and your energetic experience. You flowing through the universe you grounded here on earth, safely connected to Gaia and to her energy. Now the mantas invite you to welcome this light into any area of your body that needs special healing, any endocrine gland, any organ, any tissue, your nervous system. Use this green light to coat your body, coat the cells, open them up for healing and activation, and allow that green light to flow all throughout your body. We're going to pay some special attention to the microbiota and to bringing them into harmony with your physical structure and with your energetic bodies, because both of those have an effect on the function of your microbes. Both of those have an effect. We work with the energy, we work with the physical. deep breath. Now I want you to consciously release any density from your tissues or your energetic field related to this illness or area of concentration that you just worked with the mantis. As you breathe, allow it to flow effortlessly through your body and out those roots you sent into Gaia, where she will transmute it and turn it into something beautiful, releasing the energy signature of discord. Allow that to effortlessly flow through your body and down those roots. You might see it like black tar. You might not see anything at all. That's fine. But just think about that leaving your body now, and take another deep breath. And now we shift our focus and attention to our brains, to bring our brains into better communication so that the front speaks with the back, the prefrontal cortex and the occipital lobe, so that the left and right hemispheres communicate better, so that the communication between those two areas of the brain, between the temporal lobes, comes into higher resonance and higher communication, so that our neural tracts support this new communication pathway. Through repetition and through experiencing this repeatedly, we create these neural tracts and we strengthen this work we do here today. Listen to this again. Repeat this meditation for yourself. Work with these beings on your own. They are not only for the one, they are for everyone. Work with their energy, work with their tones, work with their light. It matters not. Bring them into your meditation, bring them into your self-healing. They will be there for you. We excite and we open all of these neural pathways in our plastic brain, meaning ability to change, to lay down new tracks. We again excite the pineal and we bring these neural tracks into communication with the pineal so that we viscerally feel ourselves as spirit having this human experience. Om Another deep breath. And we integrate all of these energies in our body, activating galactic light codes, activating our unique genetics, activating our crystalline DNA, bringing it in to close contact with our physical DNA, energizing our light body, harmonizing our microbiome, harmonizing our organs and tissues, bringing all of this together in our physical structure effortlessly, staying connected to Gaia and her energy field. She's there to support us, and the more we connect into her, the more she can help you heal and support you and ground you in her energy. And connecting into Gaia is also a wonderful way to connect into this benevolent council of mantis beings who are here to help you heal. Master geneticists. They can help you repair your DNA. Open yourself up to the possibility of health and longevity. Open yourself up to the possibility of your DNA staying healthy, your telomeres elongating, the ends of the chromosomes. They keep us young and vibrant and healthy. Open yourself up to allowing all of this to take place in your physical structure, releasing discords of disharmony in your body. Please place one hand on your heart. And I want you to connect into this part of your body. Placing the hand on the heart helps you feel this chakra, feel this organ that is responsible for producing the hormones and neurotransmitters that help us feel good in our body, help us connect to others, help us follow our path. And we send signals from the heart up to the brain, to the pineal, so that we are in alignment with our soul purpose, and we do it from a place of deep compassion and deep love for ourselves and for others and for the planet. And these beings remind us that when we are in service and when we are in our heart space, that we are truly following our path, and that there is nothing better that we can be doing for ourselves or for others than following our heart path and being in service to others. And is what we are here for, to learn and to grow together, expand our energy and our awareness together, to evolve, and do it with love, and do it with our heart. We thank all of the beings that came here today to help us find peace and harmony within our physical bodies and to connect us to our light bodies. We thank them. We send them gratitude and love. We thank Gaia. We send her gratitude and love. And I thank every one of you for being here today and bringing your energy here to create this, and for participating with me today. Thank you. So as you come back into the room, wherever you may be, I'd love to hear your experience, some feedback. When you're ready, you might need a moment. One thing I want to say about an energy transmission such as this one is that you're going to want to drink lots of good, healthy water tonight, and you're going to want to have a nice deep rest. And when we do work in the brain, it can cause a little bit of spaciness for a couple of hours. And so just take it easy, drink water, and have a good sleep tonight. Most of us will sleep really well. The occasion sometimes when we're on the brink of a big energetic shift, you might actually be quite awake tonight. So you can let me know how that goes for you.
Yeah, about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to share their
We do
experience?
collect donations to pay for the venue and for the organization's expenses. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. But we'll pass the best of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I am going to be in the area for the next 2 days doing sessions. I'm actually going to be right here at the Wellness Union. I've rented a room here to do in-person sessions for people. If anyone is interested in participating in that, I'll give you the information.
Oh no, you wanted feedback. I was just going to say, and I've had many sessions with Jeilene, like many, and actually I'll share one of my experiences. My cortisol. I've been struggling with adrenal fatigue for the last couple of years, and I had a flatline cortisol, like flatline test, saliva test, and Jeilene was the only one that changed that flatline. So she did sessions with me, and nothing else did I change, and went back up to that normal, I could wake up in the morning
Right.
and be alert. But I've never, this collective session was probably the most intense that I've ever felt from you. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but energetically I was like somewhere else.
Yeah.
So many beings. But one thing that I wanted to share that was interesting was in my mind's eye, I was seeing an eye. Like when I was focusing in my mind, there was an eye there. Did someone else see that? Yeah. So that was really cool. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. That's great.
I kept seeing faces. They kept changing. And I know you wanted us to see green, but what I saw was a dark, muddy green, and my lavender healing colors were kept swallowing it up as I was going through and sending it through the energy. So it, every time it would come, the green, it would just be. It was like it was eaten up like Pac-Man, and the faces would keep coming by, different faces, and they would change, and then the last one smiled at me. So I thought that was nice.
That's a good sign. End on a smile.
Lately, I've been seeing just a small point, like in a vast space. But now that point has kind of, I guess, like a kaleidoscope. That point, and then it was very uplifting and assuring. And the symbol of the sacred geometry is like what's the beam of energy, just holding like all the amount of energy in one spot, and then breaking it up in through the galaxy. But like they all have like a sequence for some reason, and as I kept trying not to expect, and the moment I like released the expectation, it's when it like spread
opens up.
So that was,
you let go of the resistance, and then it was able to do its thing. Yeah.
Last set of tones, I felt this, and I could almost see it as this oscillating back and forth between the left and the right hemispheres. It was like, wow, and it was a cool validation as well that something physical. It's always helpful to me.
Yeah, it's always nice we can feel it in the physical body. And the neat thing about the tones that I forgot to mention is that when I used to do this type of energy work on people before I was using the tones, my clients would go through almost a detox process after I would work on them, because I was making these shifts at the genetic level and with the epigenetic code, which is basically what controls how much of each gene is produced. So I would make these shifts, and people would go through this dramatic detox. And so it was the mantis that came in that taught me how to use the tones. I started hearing tones in my head, and I thought, am I supposed to make those? Because I don't sing. I don't have a nice voice, right? So I thought, okay. And of course, I felt like an idiot at first, right? But I started doing it, and then people really started to shift a lot more gently and without that whole detox process at the end. So, yeah, the tones are where it's at. You want to ask it?
I actually asked a question regarding the tones.
Mm-hmm.
I was been listening to like the frequencies of like 528 hertz. They say that's the DNA activation in 2012 when 12 ascension of the Earth entering into the fifth dimension. And then I started listening, YouTube searching of certain hertz to listen to. Does that resonate well with the DNA activation?
Absolutely. So different tonal frequencies, which is essentially what I'm doing here with these beings, is exactly the same. So people have learned to tune instruments, and of course there's the bowls, the singing bowls and the crystal bowls. Those are excellent. Those are other ways of doing what I'm doing. I'm putting a lot of intention behind it, and I'm working with these beings because I have a strong relationship with them. They're basically like my family. So we've been together a long time, doing this for a long time. So I'm putting a lot of intention behind it, but just listening to the sounds is also really beneficial to the body. Yeah. Did you have a question over here? Or want to make a comment?
Like the experience that I
Hold on a second.
Wait, here comes the microphone.
More the experience that I had, because I'm really not sure what happened, but it was like my whole insides were like even quivering, shaking. And I think it was Michaela mentioned seeing like the mind's eye. I kept seeing that kind of vision happening, and even there where I kind of got like choked up, where I couldn't like kind of breathe for a moment. You know, I kind of had to like, cough or clear the throat or whatever. But literally, it was like my insides was like quivering, and I'm not sure what that is, or if anybody else has ever experienced that. Or
it feels to me like you were releasing some resistance and releasing some energetic karmic overlay patterns in your body. And sometimes when they release from the body, they create vibratory fields in the body, and you can actually feel it on the physical level. So that's what it feels like to me, just connecting in with you there. Yeah, some people shake like uncontrollably all over their body, like they have almost like convulsions. So I was pretty surprised the first time that happened to one of my clients. Like, oh! But it's, everybody has a different reaction. It depends on which density you're releasing, or how much density you're releasing, what you're working with at that moment, and what your brain. There's a little area in the back of the brain that holds a lot of density and energetic imprints from experiences we've had. And when that gets activated, like we were doing today, it starts to release a lot. And so that causes a lot of physical manifestations in the body.
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you for honoring your intuition and sharing.
Thank you.
Secondly, with my experience right now, I just saw a lot of purple as well.
Mm-hmm.
In this gland right here. And then at the very end, I saw an image, and I'm wondering if you could share the beings that you work with. Are there any artifacts or by chance on Egyptian hieroglyphics or anything like that shows what they look like?
So have you ever seen, they all look somewhat different. So the Divinians are no longer in form. They're very high dimensional. Raised to me, they're like 10th and above dimensional beings. So they're formless, but I did ask them to show me what they look like before they went formless, because that's sort of an evolutionary path that we're all on, moving into the formless. And they have sort of elongated, very large heads. And the point of them showing me was to show me and prove to me that our neural tracts never stop growing, and that our brains never stop growing and modulating and adding on new neural activity. And so they have very large brains before they completely went formless. So that's what they look like. The Arcturians, not so much. I really just have an energy with them. It's not so much like I see them. But the mantis, of course, look like mantis. I mean, they're more human than a full-on insect, but they're somewhere in between the mantis that you see here on Earth and a human. They're very, very large, though. And they have sort of triangular heads, and sometimes they're wearing robes.
Can you hear, well, I know you hear it to make the tone, but can you hear it, or do you have to listen to it later? And then if you do hear it, are you like all done? Or
having the same experience that you are, you mean? I would say that I'm definitely having some of the same experience you are, because every time I do a session for somebody, I feel fantastic afterwards. I mean, I feel like I'm walking on water. So I know that it's shifting me constantly also. I don't hear probably the whole thing like you. I'm not really in a trance, but it's like I'm in sort of another space, or I'm outside of space and time. I'm somewhere else, but at the same time I'm here. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
when you listen to it later, are you like, huh?
I tend not to listen to it later. Sometimes a little bit, but.
Do you do work not in person?
No, I do work in person, and I also do.
But I mean,
video.
in addition to.
Oh, do I? Yes, I do.
Long
in fact,
distance?
a big portion of my work is over video conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so I hear a lot about like insects being really good protein. Earlier we were talking about with like diet, but do the mantises, do they think like that's beneficial? You know what I mean? Like how, like when we first, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm like, should they like don't eat us, or is it like...
Well, don't eat the mantis.
Well, yeah, but how do they feel?
A cricket? What I'd say to that is that, everything in moderation, right?
Even that?
Sure. I mean, if that works for you, if you're into it. But, it's not going to be bad. Well, some people are. Some people like insects. Some people, that's part of their diet. They grew up with it, in Africa.
My son is checking me out.
Goodbye. Thank you for coming. But like I said, everything in moderation. Like if that interests you to try it, if you feel drawn to do it, sure. But having a diet with a lot of insect in it, I don't know, that doesn't feel so good to me.
I just meant like when you were talking about like moderation in meat and like doing what the
adding other
used
proteins
to do
in.
When we were first here. They ate insects, they ate fruits and veggies, probably not a lot of meat. So that's what I was touching on.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about insects, and I do have a special place in my heart now for insects, so I personally am not going to start eating insects to supplement my meat. But I mean, that's one source of protein. It really depends. Some insects have carry a resonance, and some insects have I can just tell they have substances in their body that wouldn't go so well with your chemistry, or anybody's chemistry for that matter, unless you grew up on it, because that's the footprint of where you grew up. So I'd say here's a trick you can do. If you're thinking about eating something or taking a vitamin or adding something new to your life, hold it in your hand and get in a slightly meditative state by taking a couple deep breaths, and ask your body if it wants you to do this, or ask your body if it would be okay with you eating this. And if you have a tendency to lean forward, then that's your body's way of saying yes. Or whichever way, you can create yes or no in your body, but ask your body, because your body knows better than anybody else what it can handle. That's what I would do. Okay. Anything else online? We're all good to go? All right, thank you so much, everybody, for coming here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.